That is a chat box. You type a question, you press the submit button, and you get an answer out of your own documents with the page it came from. And I want you to guess what is behind it. A web app? A developer? A subscription with a per user price behind it? None of that. It is the same workflow I've been building on this channel for the last 3 weeks, with a whole second half bolted onto it, built out of ordinary KNIME nodes and arranged into an interface in a layout editor. No code, no hosting, no paid plan. I want to be clear about this up front to you, because this usually is the point where some tutorials start to secretly sell you something. This runs inside the KNIME application on your own machine. If you can open KNIME, you can build and open this. So this is what we're going to do today. First, I show you the thing working, start to finish, because that is actually what you came here for. Then we open it up and I walk you through every node in it and tell you what it is doing and why it is configured this way. Before any of that, 3 things have to be true, and they have to be true in this order. 1. LLM Studio is running with an large language model loaded. That is the AI itself sitting on my laptop, and it costs nothing per question because nobody out there is asked anything. If that sentence means nothing to you, there is a card here at the top of that video. Last week's video is exactly that setup, and it will take you there in roughly 15 to 20 minutes. 2. The password. The component asks me for one, and I will give it 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, really, that easy, and it works fine. 3. We click the little magnifier on the component, and that is the button that opens the interface. Start LLM Studio, password magnifier. In that order. I know it's in that order because I did it in the wrong one. Watch. LLM Studio is closed. Everything else is exactly right. Workflow is fine. The password here is fine. The document is fine. But anyways, this workflow simply falls over, as you can see here, hopefully on the screen. It returned an error. It falls over because there is nothing on the other end of the line. The workflow is trying to have a conversation with an AI model, and the AI model is not switched on. It is the same as pointing a report to a database server that is actually turned off. Nothing is broken, just that nobody is home. So, start LLM Studio, load the model, and then come back. I'm telling you this because it cost me a confused 10 minutes, and I don't want you to waste that time too. Here is LLM Studio loading, and we choose the model we had before. Now it will be working. Right, so the model is up, and here is the workflow. It is now in 2 halves. I will come back to why in a minute. So double click the component and it asks me for username and password. 1, 2, 3, 4. Click OK. Now the magnifier. So the component should be loading. Here it is. And that is the interface. Box to type in, a submit button, and the answer underneath. There is already a question in there. What is GDPR? And there is already an answer, 1 sentence with the source it came from. That is a default I set, and I will show you later why it has to be there. But that is not my question. This is my question. How long do I have to report a data breach? Click submit. And now behind that button, the whole workflow runs again. It goes and finds the passages in the document that are actually about this specific question, hands them to the AI on my own laptop, and the AI then writes the answer. 72 hours out of 88 pages PDF with the section that it actually came from, which you can actually see here. So somebody can go out and check this result on me. And that is the whole thing. Everything from here is me opening it up and showing to you how it is put together. Because the interesting part is that there is almost nothing to it. So let's start with the left part. Compared to last video, it is quick because it is only one node. So the left half basically reads the document, chops it in chunks and turns every chunk into a fingerprint the computer can compare. And that is the searchable library we already discussed. The right half here is the chat. There used to be one workflow, now they are two halves. And the reason is this node here, the model writer. It takes that library and writes it to a file into the data folder of this very workflow, which means the left half of the workflow is now something you only run when something in your underlying documents change, not every time you ask a question like we did in the last videos. The chat side only opens the stored file that is already there. I will not label it here. There is a whole video coming where I go through all the things that went wrong when I was building this, and that one is on the list. Alright, now let's go basically into the component here. Right, so here we are. And the top one here, the top line of this workflow is what you already know. From here to here, that is basically the AI. And the bottom one here is basically everything else. So top branch node 1 is the credentials configuration. And this is the node that put that password box in front of me about a minute ago. That is what it does inside a KNIME component. It reaches out and asks the person using the component for a username and password before anything runs. Node 2 is the OpenAI Authenticator, and that is the node that actually points at LLM Studio running locally on my own machine. And this one demands a key, and it will not run without one. So the key here once again is 1, 2, 3, 4, and the node goes green. And no, that is not a typo. And it's also not me being sloppy. There is a proper story behind that password, but it is not this video's story. I'll tell you later about it. And then node number 3 basically still says GPT-3.5 Turbo, as you can see here, which is a lie, because I have decided to live with that lie. It is not GPT anything, actually. It is the Llama model I loaded into LLM Studio 30 seconds ago. The node ships with a fixed list of model names and you cannot add to it. But whichever one you pick, the only model it actually can talk to is the one that LLM Studio loaded. So what is selected here does not matter. Same as last week. Card here on top of the video if you want that setup. Okay, so the bottom branch. And I want to basically start here at the far left, because the order of these two nodes here, the refresh button widget and the string widget node, are the things that surprise people. The first node is the refresh button widget and not the question input box, the button first. The button comes first and it basically triggers here the question box. So let's just quickly open it. In these settings, I have deleted the label because a button does not need a caption above it. I just called it submit, and that is all I changed. And then its output basically goes into the string widget, which looks backwards, and it's not. Here is what that wire actually does. Everything from here onwards is now downstream of that button. So when somebody clicks submit, the button says go again, and everything after it reruns. The question box, the search, the AI, the answer. That single wire is what turns a workflow you execute into an app that you actually use. Without it, that would be a question box that does nothing when you press the button. And you spend probably an evening or two wondering why. And look, this is components and variables territory. It is a step past what a lot of people ever do with KNIME, and I have deliberately kept it for the bits that you actually need for this workflow. If you want to go properly into this, components, flow variables, building interfaces, tell me in the comments below this video. I'm genuinely trying to work out whether there is an appetite for it, and the comments are the way how I find out. Now the question box, the string widget nodes. This is the string widget and it has 4 settings. The label, what information do you need, is the text that the user sees above the box. Single line input here because it is a question and not an essay. And a variable name, var user question, because that is how the rest of the workflow is going to refer to whatever gets typed in here. And then the one that matters, the default value, mine says, what is GDPR? The default is not decoration. Take it out and the workflow will not run at all, because the node at the end of this chain, the one that talks to the AI, gets handed an empty box. And an empty box is not a question. It does not fail politely with a message. It just refuses to execute and you get to work out why. So the default value does 2 jobs. It keeps the workflow executable and it doubles as a working example for whoever opens the workflow after you. They see a question already in a box and they immediately understand what that input box is for. Okay, now we turn a typed sentence into a search. First, the variable to table row node that we can actually see here. The question is currently a variable, a kind of virtual box with a value sitting inside it. And that value actually can change. Whenever the question changes, this value changes. The search node wants a table. So this node makes a 1-row table out of it, as you can see here at the very bottom. And I've told it to convert exactly that one thing. var user question. Nothing else needs to come along. Second, and this is the wire most people probably miss, the string widget also connects straight to the model reader here. That connection is not about reading the model. It is a lift. Flow variables travel forwards through connections. So by hooking the question into the model reader, the question rides along the whole rest of the workflow and it's still available right at the end, exactly here where we need it. Without that wire, it would stop dead exactly at this point after the search. The model reader actually is an easy one. We can have a quick look into it. We just point it to the model that we have stored before. It opens the library we saved in the first half of the workflow, that file off the disk in a second. No rebuilding, no re-embedding, no waiting. Then the vector store retriever. Query column, this is basically our question here. And the number of results, 5. 5, not 1. It brings back the 5 passages that are closest in meaning to what I ask. And the AI reads those 5. That is the whole idea this series is built upon. So I will not go over it again here, but just look at what comes out here. You can basically see it here in the node monitor. That is not 5 rows. That is one cell with a list inside it, and nothing downstream can actually work with a list in a cell. So Ungroup basically pulls that list apart into 5 proper rows, and then GroupBy squashes those 5 rows back together in one block of text, which sounds like I have just undone my own work, and I have not. I went from a list nothing or no one can read to one paragraph of plain text. And plain text is exactly what I'm about to hand to the AI. Okay, so halfway. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, just subscribe. That is honestly the whole trade here, right? You get the videos, the channel gets the push that makes the next one worth making. All right, now let's get to the good part. 2 notes left before the answer. Table row to variable turns that table back into variables. And I'm taking both columns here. The question and the block of passages we just built. And then the variable expression node, which is where I write the house rule. And this is the longest prompt I've written so far on this channel. And I have written it long on purpose. Last time it was 3 lines. This time it has 4 parts. They are worth learning as a shape because this shape works everywhere. It is not a KNIME specific thing. Part 1 here, the purpose. Who the AI is being right now and what job it is doing. 1 or 2 sentences. Part 2, the context. And this is the clever bit. I do not paste the document in here. I weave the variable with our plain text concatenated in here. The prompt literally says the retrieved context from the documents is, then the passages we just concatenated get dropped in at that spot. Fresh every single time someone presses submit. New question, new passages, new prompt. The prompt rebuilds itself. Part 3, the goal, selected from here. So, what a good answer looks like. Answer only from this text, name the section you took it from, and if it is not in there, say so. Part 4, tone and behavior. No hedging, no preamble, no as an AI language model and so on, yada yada. And do not sit there pausing the video to copy this off the screen. The whole prompt is in the description box down below, variable and all ready to paste. And that is the prompt. 4 parts, plain English, and it is quietly doing more work than any other node in this whole workflow. Okay, now finally, the LLM Chat Prompter node. This is where the 2 branches finally meet, and it basically takes 3 things. From the top branch here, it takes the model. That is line down to LLM Studio. The system message here, that is the house rule we just built. The whole prompt with the passages already baked into it. The new message, that is the question that the person typed, which is exactly why we dragged that variable all the way through the workflow. This exactly is the node that needed. And that is the whole grammar of talking to an AI in these few boxes here. The system message is the standing instruction, the rules of the house, more or less the same every time. Only that content part gets exchanged every single run with a new question. The new message is what the person actually said. Every chat tool you have ever used is doing exactly this behind the scenes. Here you just get to see both boxes. Okay, last note, and this is the one that does all the work on the eye. Table view. 1 column only selected here. The conversation, which is the question and the answer together. A title that just says chat with your documents. And then I turned everything else actually off. No table size selector, no pagination, no column data types in header, no global search box, no row numbers. Because every one of these little switches is saying to your user, hey, you're looking at a database. turn them all off, and what it says now is, hey, you're looking at an answer. It is the same node either way. It is just 30 seconds of unticking boxes. And it is the difference between something you would demo and use and something you just quietly close. Okay, and then the layout editor, which is the last 90 seconds of this entire project. Question box across the top, submit button underneath it, over on the right here, small, because that is where your eye is when you finish typing. Answer across the bottom here, white, because that is the thing you came for to read. And that is it. That is the interface. 3 blue nodes and a bit of arranging. So let us just prove this is not just a party trick with 2 rehearsed questions. I'm opening the data app or the component here, once again clicking on the magnifier, and I enter a completely new question. What is a data processor? I click submit, and in the background it now collects the passages, the chunks, then it hands it over to the AI, and here is my response straight out of the same 88 pages, the same rules, the same source line at the end. And that is the whole point of this one. For 3 weeks, this has been a workflow. Something you open, something you have to configure, something you execute, something you have to understand. Now it is a box you just type into. The person using it never sees a node if you don't want them to. And none of this existed 3 weeks ago. I built the whole chat just for this one video. But look of what it's made of. It is basically 3 the widget nodes, a layout editor, and a node that basically writes the library to a file so that it does not get rebuilt on every run. The workflow itself is on the KNIME Community Hub. Link is below in the description, and it is the same one you have just watched me guide you through. So you can basically download it, point it at your own document, and have this running this evening. And if you want the proper deep dive into components and flow variables, the stuff that makes this basically possible, say so in the comments down below. I read those comments, and that's how I genuinely decide what I'm going to make next. If this was useful, subscribe. It genuinely motivates me, and it is what keeps coming a new video every single week.